If you take a heart cell out of a developing heart and put it alone in a petri dish, it keeps beating. If you put a second heart cell next to it, the two will fall in the same rhythm without any direct connection. Coherence is not something the body has to be taught. It's something that the body seeks. This changes everything about how you might think about fertility, your nervous system, and the work you've been doing to feel more regulated. Because if your body is built to find coherence, the question is not how to create it. The question is, what is interrupting it? Hi, I'm Michelle Orbitz, a fertility acupuncturist and host of the Wholesome Fertility Podcast. I want to spend this episode in one specific idea because I think it is the most underrated piece of context in the entire fertility conversation. The idea that the body is built for coherence, that synchronization, alignment, and rhythmic order are not something the body is straining to produce. They are the body's natural default. This matters tremendously for women on the fertility journey because so much of how fertility gets framed implies that you are managing a system that is somehow inherently disorganized, like your hormones are unruly aspects of your body that need controlling, and like your cycle is something that needs to be wrangled, or your nervous system is constantly threatening to fall apart, and you need 100 practices to keep it in line. That framing is exhausting, and it's also wrong. The body's not constantly trying to fall apart. The body's constantly trying to organize itself. Underneath everything, every cell, every organ, every rhythm, there's a pull towards coherence. So when something feels off in your cycle, in your nervous system, in your sleep, the most useful question is not how do I force this back into order? It's what is interrupting the coherence that wants to happen here. That is a different orientation, and it changes the kind of work you do. Let me start with the heart cell research because it's genuinely beautiful. In tissue cultured studies going back decades and continuing into the present in cardiology and bioengineering labs, researchers have shown that isolated cardiomyocytes, individual heart muscle cells separated from the heart, will continue to beat on their own when kept alive in a petri dish. Each cell has its own intrinsic rhythm. They do not need a brain. They do not need a nervous system. They beat. And here is the part that gets remarkable. When two independently beating heart cells are placed together near each other, they synchronize. They find each other's rhythm and lock in. A 1985 study by Jongsma and colleagues, published in the Journal of Physiology, showed that when isolated rat heart cells in tissue culture grow together, they synchronize their originally independent beats to a common rhythm. More recent work in 2016 in Nature Physics has shown that synchronization happens through both electrical and mechanical signals, and once it forms, the cells maintain it for an hour or even after the signal stops. So we have direct, observable physical evidence that cells on their own, without any orchestration from a higher system, seek synchronization with each other. They want to be in coherence. Now zoom out from the petri dish to the whole body, and the same principle keeps showing up at every level. Your heart and your breath synchronize through what cardiologists call respiratory sinus arrhythmia. Your heart beats slightly faster on the inhale and slightly slower on the exhale. When the timing of those two systems is well coupled, you have what is measured as high heart rate variability, which is one of the strongest indicators of autonomic health that we have. Researchers have found that when a person breathes at a specific rate, around 6 breaths per minute, the breathing and heart rhythms enter a state called cardiac coherence or resonance. This is documented in peer-reviewed cardiology literature. A 2025 study published in Scientific Reports analyzed 1.8 million heart rate variability biofeedback sessions from users around the world and confirmed that the highest coherence scores center around this 6 breath per minute rhythm. So coherence is not a vague spiritual concept. It's a measurable physiological state, and the body knows how to find it. We just have to give it the right conditions. This matters specifically for fertility, because of how heart rate variability connects to the reproductive system. A 2020 study in Scientific Reports by Grant and colleagues showed that ultradian rhythms in heart rate variability actually anticipate the onset of the LH surge, the hormonal event that triggers ovulation. In other words, the autonomic nervous system and the reproductive system are coupled oscillators. They are talking to each other constantly. The state of one shapes the state of the other. And we know that around ovulation specifically, heart rate variability drops measurably as the body shifts from a more parasympathetic follicular state into a more sympathetic luteal state. So going from yin to yang. Multiple studies have replicated this. The cycle and the autonomic nervous system are not parallel systems. They are a single system in conversation all month long. Chinese medicine has been pointing at this orientation for thousands of years. In TCM, health is not the absence of disease. Health is the smooth flow and harmonious interaction of qi between organ systems. Each organ has its own rhythm, its own energetic quality, its own role. And when those rhythms are in good relationship to each other, you have health and vitality. When they get out of phase with each other, when the liver is too dominant and when the kidneys are too depleted, or when the heart is too agitated, we have what is called disharmony. The disharmony is not a failure of one organ, it's an imbalance of the relationship between organs. And the heart in the system has a particular role. The heart houses Shen, which is consciousness, and it's considered the emperor of the organ system. When the Shen is settled, the heart is steady. Every organ can function in its right relationship. And when the Shen is scattered, the rest of the systems get pulled out of phase. Remember from previous episodes, the heart connects to the uterus through the Bao Mai. So the steadiness of the heart is not just an emotional or spiritual matter, it's a physiological substrate underneath reproductive function. The womb is taking its cues from the heart. This is part of why so many ancient practices across many traditions focus on the breath and the heart. Pranayama in yoga, Qigong in China, they were not unrelated. They were all in their own language, accessing the same physiological state we now measure as cardiac coherence. They were giving the body the conditions for its native rhythm to come forward. There is a phrase I love from the Taoist tradition: the sage does not seek harmony, the sage stops disturbing it. And that is essentially what the heart cell experiment is showing us. The cells were not taught to synchronize. They were not given a script. They were simply given the proximity, the right environment, and enough quiet to find each other. The synchronization emerged on its own. So how do you actually use this in your fertility journey, especially if you've been feeling like your body is somehow off track? The first shift is mental. Stop trying to generate coherence. Start removing what is interrupting it. This sounds very simple, but it changes the whole feel of the work. Most fertility plans are organized around adding things. Add this supplement, add this protocol, add this practice. The list grows and grows, and women on the journey end up being exhausted from all the doing. But coherence is not produced through addition. It's allowed through subtraction. The body already wants to find its rhythm. So the work is to make more space. Practically, this means looking at what is interrupting. Chronic light at night, eating in a sympathetic state, constant input from devices, holding your breath without even realizing it, sleeping fewer than 7 hours a night, suppressing emotions, forcing the body through cycles of overwork and crash. These are disruptors. Removing them does more, in my experience, than adding any single practice. The second shift is to give the body access to its own rhythm regularly. The simplest entry point, supported by substantial body of research, is breathing at around 6 breaths per minute. That is approximately 5 seconds in, 5 seconds out. And you can do this 5 to 10 minutes a day, ideally in a moment when you can actually settle. This is not just a relaxation technique. It's a direct biological intervention. Breathing at this pace places the breathing and heart rhythms into resonance. Your heart rate variability climbs. Your vagal tone increases. Your autonomic state shifts towards parasympathetic dominance. And because of how coupled these systems are, the effects ripple into your sleep, your digestion, your hormonal patterns, and yes, the rhythms underneath your cycle. The third shift is to give your heart specifically what it needs to settle. In heart math research, simply bringing attention to the heart space and breathing as if through the heart while recalling a feeling of warmth or care, somebody you love, produces measurable shifts in heart rhythm coherence. This is not magical thinking. This is actually documented physiology. The heart responds to the quality of attention you place upon it. Fourth, build in time where you're doing absolutely nothing. Not meditating, not journaling, not breath work, not productive rest. Just nothing. Laying on the floor, sitting by a window, walking without your phone. Coherence requires moments where the system is not being asked for anything. The petri dish experiment worked because the cells had nothing to do but find each other. The body needs that too. None of this is about discipline. It's about leaving room, just allowing yourself to space out. I want to leave you with the image that I started with. 2 heart cells in a dish, beating on their own, finding each other's rhythm without instruction. That is happening inside your body right now. In every tissue, at every level, it's happening between your heart and your breath, between your nervous system and your hormones. Between your cycle and your circadian rhythm, the pull towards coherence is constant. If your fertility journey has been feeling like a long fight to get a disorderly body to behave, I would gently invite you to consider that the order is already there. The body is already trying. Most of what we call fertility work is creating conditions for what wants to happen anyway. This is a softer way to live, and in my experience, it works better than the alternative. Thank you for being here today. And if this episode resonated and you want to take this work into your daily practice, I created a free guide called the Be Calm Protocol that walks you through grounded, body-based practices for nervous system regulation and support. You can find it at michelleorovitz.com/be-calm with 2 M's. The link is in the description. And if you found this episode useful, please leave a review because that helps more people find this information. So thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.